episodes, we have someone waiting for us, someone we have been all waiting for throughout this World Confluence, and that is Reverend Gravrajika Divyananda Prana Mataji. Mataji is the principal of the Nivedita Vidya Mandir and editor of Samvit, New Delhi. And she is a monastic member of Sri Sharada Math. Currently, she is stationed at the Ramakrishna Sharada Mission, New Delhi. She is an initiate of the Reverend Swami Ranganathanandaji Maharaj, and she received sannyasa in 2007. A very, very active member in the publications of the Math. She was also the headmistress of the Delhi Mission School and the principal of the Nivedita Vidya Mandir, New Delhi, from 2014 to 2019. She's currently editor of Samvit, the English journal of Sri Sarada Math. She is a regular speaker, hence our wait for us, and she speaks at different national institutions as well as in several international platforms. We welcome Mataji.
Namaste, good evening, and good morning to some of you. And I'm grateful to this conference for having me here. And I think it's the second time that I'm speaking at this conference. It was last year that I was with you, and this time it's a virtual conference. So the subject matter for our discussion happens to be humanity and spirituality. Since we have been hearing renowned speakers dwell upon this for the last 2 days, I would just like to add a few Upanishadic insights into this concept of humanity and spirituality. So what I will be speaking of will be something from the Upanishads straight. As we all know, Upanishads are the cream or the essence of our Vedic thought. And in the Upanishads, we have some very deep insights into the nature of reality and how spirituality and, you can say, humanitarian values are connected. We can draw these connections from this very elevating literature, which is telling, to put it very briefly, it is telling us the connection between the human and the divine, and the need for spirituality to uphold our humanity. Because without the cultivation of spiritual virtues, spiritual values, our humanity itself will be at stake. Now, how do they come to this conclusion? You see, today's youngsters, and as you just heard, I have been working with IITs in India. Today's youngsters are not scared of asking, well, why indeed values? Why at all do we have values? If I get more joy, more pleasure by just following my instincts, just following my will, why at all should I not do that? So today's youngsters they don't hesitate in asking questions like this. So on what does our humanity actually rest? And what is it that invigorates our humanity? What is it that makes it indispensable to human society? Values. So this is something which we really have to think about. It's not that essentially it is the police force that is responsible for our humanity or the legislation that is responsible for the human values in us. There is something within the human being essentially that guides us, that motivates us towards the ethical path, that motivates us towards value orientation. And this is what we call, you can call it reality orientation. When we know the heart of reality, the heart of this existence of ours, we are naturally, in a way, morally inclined towards our humanity. So you see, these humanitarian values, they are not ideas, somebody's ideas. They are not even ideals. They are not ideologies. They are the very nature of this existence. When we touch the heart of reality, We understand humanitarian values is all that there can be, without which we wouldn't survive as a species and on the top of evolution. We wouldn't survive, we wouldn't propagate, we wouldn't live as a society, as social beings without these values. And this understanding comes when we touch this heart of reality, which is what spirituality is about. So then this becomes the connection between our humanity and spirituality. Without spirituality, our humanity would be at stake because we wouldn't know why values. Why should there be values? Because if we do not have values in our personal lives, in our collective lives, as a society, as communities, if we do not have values and ideals, well, then we know very well we cannot maintain a high level of culture. We cannot live together if each person thinks only of himself, which naturally means exploiting others. Because to augment one's own selfish ends, one will take recourse to exploiting others. So then we cannot live as a society. Then we require all the more laws and legislations in order to handle our instincts and emotions. So for this, for a society to be stable, for a society to be natural, moral, humanistic by itself, it requires a reality orientation. It requires an orientation towards the real nature of things, the real nature of this existence. And this understanding, this penetration will naturally bring values into our lives. It will naturally make us value oriented. So this becomes a great connection between our humanity and spirituality. Vivekananda put it in very simple words. He said, human ethics in Hinduism is based upon the ontology of the self, which means ethical standards, ethical values. What are they based upon? They are based upon my own real nature. My own real nature happens to be not merely this body-mind complex. So you see, this is how spirituality comes in. If I was just this body, then satisfying this body would be the ideal of my life, isn't it? Obviously, since I happen to, my identity is only body-based, then satisfying the instincts of the body would become the ideal of life. For many people, that is the ideal of life because their conception of themselves is only body. And then there are the thinkers, the philosophers, the people who know that it's the mental personality that gives majesty to our being. So the mind, the identity is with the mind. So then cultivating the mind, cultivating the intellect, this would become the ideal of life. If we were just body and mind, this would encompass all of our humanitarian values. The culture of the body, the culture of the mental faculties, the culture of our intellect. But is this all? This is where the Upanishads step in and tell us, this is not all of man. This is not all of humanity. There is something within you which is the core truth about your personality. It is what is called the Atman, a unit of pure consciousness, which you really are, which is your true identity, which functions through this body-mind complex. So an understanding of this, an experience of this reality, why we say it is the reality about ourselves, because it is the only unchanging element in us. The body and mind are constantly changing, but the self is changeless. The self ever is using this body-mind complex to express itself in this physical world. So this being the core truth about the human personality, then naturally what would become our ideal? It would not be just the cultivation of body and mind. It would be cultivation of the greater and greater expression of that self, the Atman, through this body-mind complex. If my own identity is the self, the Atman, then my ideal naturally becomes expressing my true being through this body-mind complex. If I was just the body, just the cultivation of bodily needs, bodily instincts would be all that there was to do. If I was just the mind, just the cultivation of the intellect, mental powers, concentration, this is all we would aim for. But because essentially the human being is, whatever you call it, the soul, the self, the Atman, but a spiritual entity basically, manifesting through this body-mind complex, so naturally we step into the realm of impersonal values, the highest humanitarian values, selflessness, compassion, kindness, integrity, honesty, straightforwardness. On the collective front, equality and fraternity. They are all based on the truth of this one single self manifesting itself through different bodies and minds. The same consciousness which is my real identity, is your real identity, and everybody's real identity. It is manifesting through different bodies and minds. That gives us the sense of different personalities. So the Upanishad envisions this to be the reality about humanity. One self, one consciousness manifesting through different bodies and minds. And that is why values, that is why actually doing good to you is doing good to me, who's in another form. Doing harm to the other person is actually doing harm to myself, who am manifesting in another form. When the core truth about our personalities is the same, you know, this is the rational explanation of why be good. Because you are only harming yourself if you are not good to yourself. So this has been explained very beautifully in the Upanishads, and this has been the common experience of saints and sages of all cultures, all spiritual traditions. They perceive palpably a unity in the midst of all this diversity and multiplicity around us. They perceived an underlying current of unity. We may call it consciousness, we may call it God, we may call it Brahman, Atman, whatever. But there is a unity encompassing all creation. And humanity is nothing but an expression of the respect you pay to that unity, to that single element, which, as it were, passes through this entire creation. So, to be able to do this, we must perceive the reality as it is. I can give you a very beautiful incident from the life of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna, as we all know, he was a person who went so frequently into the state of samadhi. If you read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, one of the greatest saints of our times, who actually lived in God consciousness. And throughout the day, repeatedly, he would go into the state of samadhi and come out of it. And when he came out of it, what was his perception of this world? How did he see this world of diversity? See, the way we are seeing it and the way he saw it is distinctly different. I will give you a simple incident. You will also find it in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Once M, the author of Sri Ramakrishna, comes into Sri Ramakrishna's room and sits in front of the master. He sees that the master is in deep samadhi. After a long time, Sri Ramakrishna comes back to normal consciousness. Then look at his words. He says, "Do you know what I see? I see that this whole creation is nothing but He. He has become all this. He is manifesting as all this, these men and women, this temple garden, these trees and flowers and the river. It is all He. It is all Brahman in different names and forms. But one substance manifesting differently in so many ways." Then he gave a beautiful example also. He said, you know, Jamun momer pata momer phul. Suppose there was a garden made entirely of wax. And everything in that garden is made up of wax. Just imagine it. The buildings are made up of wax, the trees, are all made up of wax. The fruits hanging in the trees are wax. The leaves are wax. It's a wax garden. The people who have come into the garden, they are also made up of wax. Sri Ramakrishna says, this wax, this is the essential thing. This is that substance out of which everything is molded. And what is this wax? It is divine consciousness, Brahman. I see this whole universe. It is that Brahman alone in different names and forms. At one particular point, it is molded into a tree, into a fruit. Another point, it's a jiva, it's a human being walking about in the garden. But the substance is the same. One consciousness manifesting through different names and forms. This was his actual perception. So if this is the reality of things, if this is the nature of life, then imagine our very ethical standards would change. Our humanity would change. It would blossom and flower. You don't need a police force and a legislation to enforce a kind of morality. Morality should not be a convention. Morality is the natural thing, is a natural way to be, because there is divinity at the heart of everyone. That very same Brahman manifesting through different names and forms. That is why Swami Vivekananda, how did he define religion? You see, this is a remarkable definition. He said, each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest that divinity by controlling nature, external and internal. And you do this either by work, worship, psychic control, philosophy, by one or all of these, and reach the goal. And this is the whole of religion. And books, temples, churches, bells, doctrines, dogmas, these are all secondary details. The essential thing is the inherent divinity in every soul. It is potential, it appears to be potential to make it kinetic. That's the whole matter. That's the whole thing. Humanity is gradually making that potential divinity kinetic. The divinity spirituality is already there. You are ever the spirit to awaken it. Once it is awakened, you will relate with the other person in a totally different way. The other person is nothing but me in another form. The same consciousness in two different bodies and minds, expressing itself in different bodies and minds, but the same consciousness. So this is at the heart of virtue, morality, ethics. This is the meaning of Hindu ethics, is based on the ontology of the self, on the reality of the self. And this is the foundation of our humanity. That is why you can never separate humanitarian values from spirituality. If we don't respect and cultivate spirituality, gradually our humanity will come down. Because we will not be able to answer the question, why value? Why should we have a value-based society at all? Value is for the simple reason the nature of existence is divine. That is why give value to everything. Respect everything, worship everything. This is the nature of life. As I told you, this is not an idea, the idea of some rishi. This is not an ideal of some philosopher. This is not an ideology of some leader. This is the fact of existence. How long will we ignore it? There comes a time in every human life when you cannot ignore the essentials of life, the heart of life. And this is what the Upanishads are trying to capture. That is why Upanishads it's a set of literature where you do not find any element of dogma, doctrine, belief. It can't even be called a religion, but it is the essence of every religion. It encompasses the rationale for values and humanitarian values. It encompasses the rationale for our ethical systems, the perception of the unity of all existence. See, if I perceived you as me in another form. Will somebody have to teach me to be kind and moral? Tell me. Will there be a necessity to do that? As for school children, you give in our times, when we were in school, we had a separate period called moral science, in which moral values were taught with examples, and then we were told that these have to be inculcated into your personality. Now, a moral value is naturally a part of your being. It has to be awakened, that is all. Through this reality orientation, by understanding the nature of life, if you basically ask the question, who am I? Naturally, you will be led to the very core truth about your personality. And this was discovered to be the same in all beings. And that is why humanity and spirituality go together. They go hand in hand. Where there is spirituality, there will be the highest flowering of human values. And where there is no spirituality, where one's concept of oneself is only body-based, only mind-based, there humanity also will shrink. Human values, it will be difficult. Human values based only on compassionate grounds can give rise to a whole lot of troubles for us, because our compassion tends to wax and wane. But humanitarian values based on the perception of reality, on the experience of real religion or spirituality, these do not wax and wane, because that is the nature of things. As I told you, once I perceive my own truth to be the same as yours, you become me in another form. So then nobody has to teach me how I should treat you, how I should deal with you. One does not exploit oneself, isn't it? One does not ill-treat oneself. So that will be our vision of the whole of humanity. Beautiful illustrations for this vision are there in the lives of all saints in spiritual cultures of the world. Everywhere. You take the simple life of Holy Mother Sri Sharda Devi. The glory of her life is its simplicity. In very simple ways, she demonstrates this perception of complete unity with all beings. That's why she is able to make everyone her own naturally. What the Chandogya Upanishad is describing in so many terms, in so many ways, that you find so simply flowering in the life of Holy Mother Sri Sharda Devi. So I can draw a bit of a comparison here between the two. See, in the Chandogya Upanishad, you have a story, the story of Shvetaketu. So in a very rational way, his father teaches him the nature of existence. Initially, the father tells him that, my son, have you learned that knowing which you know everything in this universe? He picks up a lump of clay from the ground and says, just as by knowing this lump of clay, you know everything that this clay is made up of. So also, do you know that one substance, knowing which you know everything that this universe is made up of? And this boy Shvetaketu says, Father, I don't know anything like that. I don't think I was taught anything about this. He has just come from the house of his guru after a long period of study. And there's a certain amount of pride in him. So his father is testing him and making him understand the real spirit of the Upanishad. Then the father says, look, my son, look at this pot. It is nothing but clay in a particular name and form. So if I remove the name and form, is there anything called pot? It's all clay. Think and see. There's nothing called pot apart from clay. So also, there is nothing called the human personality apart from consciousness. Consciousness with a name and form makes one particular personality. Consciousness with another name and form makes another personality. So now we are all personalities. But the essential truth about us is consciousness. The essential truth about the pot is clay. And clay alone is the truth about the pot, because the name and the form can always change. You can bring down a pot, but the clay will remain over. So also, when personality is brought down, death is the great leveler, it brings down everybody. But you as consciousness remain over. So the essential thing about the human personality is consciousness. And that consciousness is the same. You can make it into a pot, you can make it into a ladle, you can make it into whatever you want. Name and form differ. Names and forms differ, but not consciousness. So also, he gives many examples like this. He actually adds a little bit of salt to a pot of water and asks Shvetaketu to taste it. And then he says, tell me, how does it taste? It's salty. Salty at the top, salty in the middle, salty at the bottom. So salt has pervaded this entire water. So also Brahman, the ultimate reality of this universe, has pervaded this entire creation. You can't ask, where is consciousness? It is in consciousness that you function. Because of consciousness that we think. It is in awareness that we think. In awareness that we perceive. We perceive even this body and mind in awareness. So Brahman is all pervading. It is the basic substratum of the universe. It is the existential truth of life. And upon this stand, you can bring value to everything into your life. You give value to the pot, you give value to the ladle, you give value to the salt, you give value to the water the pot holds, to everything. Because essentially you have understood the unchanging element about that pot. He takes him to a stream and tells him, look, there's a stream flowing here. There's another stream coming in from there. They all join together, all these streams, and make a river. And then these rivers go and merge into the ocean. Now this particular stream has a name. So also that stream. And then this river also has a name. But when they all merge into the ocean, what happens to the names and forms? It's all water. Water is the truth about this stream, this river, that river. So also consciousness is the truth about all personalities. And name and form are limiting adjuncts taken up in order to manifest in this world. But if we lose sight of the essential thing, our humanity will start shaking. So this orientation towards the heart of being is very important to uphold our humanity. In the life of Holy Mother Sri Sharda Devi, here I would like to draw this comparison. She would not explain values in all these Upanishadic terms, but her life showed she valued even a single broom. If somebody threw a broom, she would say, no, it has to be placed with respect. It is doing such an important task. Her whole day was given in the service of others. Her love was all-encompassing. She did not see any division between human beings. She perceived the same consciousness in all beings, and that then only love has that force, that transforming power. So you see, in the practical lives of saints, they have clearly been able to grasp this reality of existence, and that is why they express the highest values of life. Their humanity, in them, humanity has reached its highest pitch. In them, humanity has reached its fulfillment. It has become divinity. They are divine souls who actually come to show us the real nature of existence. I remember one beautiful incident in the life of Mahapurush Maharaj, Swami Shivanandaji, how he perceived this world. On Guru Purnima day, a whole lot of people would come to Belur Math to do pranams to the Guru. Mahapurush Maharaj was the Guru at that time, Swami Shivanandaji. He was a direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. So his mind was always merged in God consciousness. So when he would sit there, one Guru Purnima day, he was sitting and there was a whole line of people coming to bow to him. So they would bow down before him and then go out of the hall. And he would in turn also bow down at them. So his sevak told him, Maharaj, you don't have to bend down. They are offering their obeisance to the Guru. You please don't bend down, because he was quite old at that time, and why did he have to bend every time? So the sevak was telling him. And then he suddenly said, you know, my son, I don't see men and women. I just see a mass of consciousness. So I'm bowing down to that. It is all Brahman. I'm bowing down to that. So their very perception has changed. And that is why the highest values you find in them. So let us remember, spirituality is required to cultivate our humanity. Today our human values themselves are in question. For the simple reason, we don't go to the heart of the matter. We don't go into spirituality. But at least this we should be able to draw from this great culture which has invested its best minds, its greatest minds for the longest periods of human history into spiritual research. The Upanishadic texts date back to 4000 BCE. The Rig Veda is the oldest text available to humankind, oldest written word available to humankind. So these texts are, and what is the subject matter of these Upanishads? It is the heart of our being. It is the nature of consciousness, the nature of life, the source of our humanity. So this is a culture which has strengthened this aspect, bringing it out today into our understanding of values, ethical systems, into our educational apparatus, into understanding our laws, into understanding our social systems, into strengthening our culture, strengthening the perversities of our mind, into practical realms of mind management. This is the important task before us. You can draw enormously from this culture. You can draw enormously from this spirituality and boost our humanity by drawing value from its source, essentially, by drawing values from reality. And this is how humanity and spirituality together always, they move together, they join hands, and we have to take them together. Otherwise, we will never be able to address the highest human values, their purpose, their reach in a way that elevates humanity and human society. We will not be able to answer these questions. We will not be able to provide the rationale for them. So this is what I had wanted to discuss about humanity and spirituality. If there's a question answer format, we can take up a few question answers. Otherwise, I would like to dwell a little more on these aspects. Can you please tell me if there's a question answer session, Dr. Rahul?
You'll come on the room.
There are certain questions. There are certain questions.
So shall we take up the questions now?
Yes, we can do that, right? So we have questions from different parts of India. One is from Kolkata. Her name is Sritama. Sritama says, Pranam Mataji. My question is that although I know that I am not merely the body and the mind, that there is a deeper unifying consciousness, in real life, in practical terms, I cannot access it. I find it very difficult. So can you suggest some means of doing so?
Yes. See, this is the question. This is everybody's question, because
right,
it's not visible, it's not palpable, but think and see, you are a conscious entity, and that is why you have a thought process. Because you have a thought process, you have identifications with body, with a particular name, with a particular form, with a particular mode of thought. So your being a conscious being, that itself shows there is a unit of consciousness in you. Otherwise, what is conscious? The mind is conscious. So what's the source of that conscious experience? That means there is consciousness, isn't it? Now, to prove to you logically, what is the proof that I have eyes?
I can see.
And what's the proof that I have a nose?
I can smell.
So then, if I have conscious experiences, it should be proof of what?
That there is a unifying spirit in me.
See, rationally we can proceed this way, logically. But if you want to experientially go into this, you require the power of meditation.
Right.
Meditation is always recommended for a person who wants to experience the spirit. It's not enough to logically convince you. Logic is a form of thought. Thought alone does not convince, but the experience will convince you. Basically, meditation is the art of emptying mind so as to track the source of the mind. Vivekananda would give a very simple example. He would say, imagine a lake. If the lake is very still, if the waters are very still and clear and not wavy on the surface, then you can see through the lake to the bottom of the lake. So also if the mind is very still and calm and clear, not turbid, which means pure, you can see to the bottom of the mind, you can see its source. So this is the method to know the self, which is not visible currently, which is not available to sense perception. It can be known. You can know the knower by clearing the mind. If you read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna gives us a spectacular equation. Pure mind is equal to pure buddhi is equal to pure Atman. This is the formula he gives us. The Atman is nothing but the very pure mind. It can see its own source. So this is the method we recommend.
So I'm sure this question was asked by Sritama. Sritama, I'm sure you have got your answer. Meditation is the practical way in which you can access your consciousness. Another very generic question, which we have got from Sakti Dasan from Kerala. He asks, how do we actually find out what is the purpose of my life? I mean, the purpose may vary from individual to individual. So he talks about himself.
Right. So this is the important question for youngsters. How do I know what is the purpose of my life? See, in a very clear state of mind, again, I would say almost a meditative mind. If you can find out what you feel intensely about, you will know the purpose of your life. What is it that you feel very intensely about? Where your emotions come to you can say, come into full bloom, where your thoughts come to a standstill, where you are naturally sensitive. That shows where your energies are invested in the past. That shows your inclination, and that will decide your purpose in life, where exactly you want to go. So find out in a meditative moment, not in a state of restlessness, but find out through calming your mind in a state of supreme calmness. Find out what affects you most, what you feel intensely about. If you feel intensely about human suffering, then definitely your path is that of service. If you feel intensely about researching into something, a subjective experience or the I or the Atman, then you should know that spirituality is the goal of your life. What do you feel intensely about? That is the essential thing. And that decides your purpose, your goal orientation in life. So please find out and see if this is true or not.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you for your discourse. And I'm sure it has helped people worldwide, as usual. And thank you. We hope to see you and hear you in better times. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.